All right, what's going on, people? Hope everybody had a safe, happy, healthy, what have you holiday, dealing with all the fun holiday BS, all the family good stuff. We have a special guest for today's finale of our Talkin' Lost episode because we are covering one of the biggest, one of the most important, one of the most impactful Lost episodes, the season 3 finale, Through the Looking Glass, the episode where we say goodbye to Charlie. It was hyped up last week with Greatest Hits. Luke and I talked a lot about that, how I don't think I've seen a better use of a cataloging of how a character was going to meet their end in a way in any other TV show. And so much so that we actually brought on a very special guest as well, Mr. Pat Sweeney, who was on for our fall movie draft. Pat, happy to have you here.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And it also kind of dovetails nicely with a couple of other things as well, because Luke, we had the next 3 episodes of Stranger Things, the final season, drop on Christmas Day. And to say that the reactions have been all over the place, I think might be the understatement of the year. As well, we also have, like I said, the show that we have been covering over the last couple of weeks with our Lost recaps. The premiere of Vince Gilligan's brand new Apple TV show, Pluribus. The finale dropped the day before Christmas. So we're going to be talking about all of those. But Luke, you were bringing up some interesting points as well about kind of like some interesting comparison points that happened between all 3 of these episodes of TV. We kind of covered our movie finale last week when we covered Avatar and Marty Supreme. This week is our TV wrap up before we hit the big grand finale on New Year's, when the big 2-hour-long Stranger Things finale drops both simultaneously on Netflix and in theaters. But Luke, I wanted you to kind of take the floor here, basically talk about like kind of, what we were discussing in private as far as like kind of how, comparison points between certain TV shows as far as kind of like what one is doing right, what one is necessarily doing wrong, and how we may or may not be getting geared up for another Game of Thrones situation when the finale drops on Wednesday.
Yeah, I guess watching Lost and Stranger Things like at the same time is like, oh man, this is like amateurs and professionals here. So I guess what I sort of noticed, I don't know if anyone else noticed it, but with Stranger Things is that it's all plot, and none of the plot that happens is due to character choices. I think that's the biggest thing, and it's that because it's the finale and so much has to happen the way it does, the characters lose autonomy. In Game of Thrones, it was, okay, we need to rush through all these arcs. Jon Snow, he's not really going to do much. Daenerys, we're just going to ramp up her thing, make 3 seasons, smash into one. Jamie, we're just going to go completely back on his arc just to like get the pieces into play. And in Stranger Things, there's like a million characters in every shot.
There's so many characters. How many characters?
They just keep adding. They keep adding.
How many characters were in that one scene when what's it called? When Will came out? Like I lost track. It was like 15 characters.
The catering people from the set should have been there too.
Honestly.
Yeah. And then you have Lost, where in this finale, everything happens because the character chooses to do something. Sawyer, he chooses to go back. Hurley, he chooses to go back. That's why it happens the way it does. Jack, he chooses to not do a certain thing when Ben tells him something. It's all because characters choose to do it, and that's better storytelling. It's not just character is going to go here and something's going to happen, and they're
authentic to the character.
Yeah.
I guess when we go through each one, we'll dissect it there. Yeah. But I think that's what I noticed, and why I didn't resonate with Stranger Things.
It's almost like the age-old metric of character dictating plot, not the other way around, always is going to make for a good story. And the reason why we tend to kind of fizzle out and our enjoyment of certain kind of the big overhyped fandom things happens is because it ultimately comes down to exactly what you're saying. Plot over the necessity of the rushed plot nature kind of overtakes and dictates, any interesting character decisions. And a lot of the things that I've been noticing about the reactions to Stranger Things, this batch of 3 episodes that drop, which again, some of which I agree with, some of which I don't, is kind of this overwhelming kind of take on like kind of what made people fall in love with Stranger Things when it first premiered all those years ago versus kind of what it has become. And ultimately, yes, Stranger Things has become a victim of its own success, like so many other things have. But the fact that I think kind of unfairly so, like certain attributions of kind of how blockbuster filmmaking has now become a staple of television as well, and kind of certain things that make television has kind of, been taken away from that as a result of it. I don't necessarily know if that's all on Stranger Things, but Stranger Things certainly has a big part has a big is a big part of that. And I think it's really, really funny how most notably you're seeing how all of the things that have like, elevated Stranger Things kind of above the rest of the mold, the massive, massive ensemble, the quote unquote cinematic film, the millions upon millions of dollars that they are dropping on these special effects. And it's all in service, kind of just repetition for repetition's sake, ultimately. Characters just voicing things that we already know. Build ups to these massive sequences that have just no dramatic weight in any way, shape, or form. What are supposed to be it almost feels like kind of baity and manipulative. It's very, very clear that they're trying to go for like a big, grandiose, Marvel-esque finale. Ultimately, it's part of the reason why they've split up this final season in the way that they have. But it just feels completely unearned. It really, really doesn't. Now, that's not to say that that there aren't things that I still enjoy about this final season. I do. I still think that some of the criticism, particularly towards certain of the scenes, are kind of a little bit unwarranted and aimed at the wrong areas. I'm seeing a lot of similar things to when The Last Jedi came out, and people's kind of anger at the inherent quality and the kind of direction that the creators were taking that in kind of aimed at some of the wrong areas. And that kind of subject and matter and discourse and discussion, I think, can sometimes be a little bit more harmful than I think that we would like. But overall, Pat, ultimately, what are your thoughts on kind of like where Stranger Things has gone, and ultimately what it means to culture now?
It's I remember I loved the first season. I had loved the second season too, and the third season was the first time I thought like we're just kind of repeating. I was like, I hope this ends like not that I wanted to, but and then season 4, everyone thought it was like a return to form. I thought it just repeated again.
Yeah,
and then but I was like, okay, let's go. This season 4 ended with a huge cliffhanger with a real promise of something, and they literally put a metal band-aid on it in the first 2 minutes, and it's like now we're back to square one. And the characters, you talk about the characters and plot, some of the characters just exist for like Jonathan and Nancy exist to have problems with Jonathan and Nancy. They don't serve, like, is John even like Will's brother anymore, like until that scene where he came out, like it doesn't even feel like that. Or Will's mom, it's just, and no one exists for any reason on this show other than this little corner for their character. And I thought there were some good character moments, like in these last 3 episodes, but it just didn't serve the overall story. And the overall story itself is just I don't know. Other people were saying Holly's getting too much screen time, and it's like I kind of like her section though, because at least it felt like a forward momentum of and Sadie Sink is probably the one actress on the show that hasn't phoned it in here. So
she's like the least who wants to be there, but she's also putting on the best performance.
Yeah, she's like clearly the most talented.
The one who clearly wants to be the least is giving the best performance. And in terms of the comparison to the Marvel plotline, I mean, we finally get the big end-all reveal of like what Vecna's evil plan is, what he's been trying to do. We finally learn the secret of what the Upside Down has actually been this whole time, right? So we're getting the answers to all these mysteries that both I don't know if we ever necessarily were interested in. I don't necessarily know if we needed to know like all this mythology and lore behind the Upside Down, kind of getting into the whole mystery box element of it, right? The inherent mystery is always going to be more interesting than the answer. But also the fact that Stranger Things was never really posed as a mystery box show to begin with. It was never like this big mysterious thing. It was always posed as like this, amazing homage to like the works of the 80s, that was kind of like slapdash and like more modernized, I guess you could say it. But so we have Vecna's evil plan. We know why he's kidnapping all the kids, and it's literally almost beat for beat the same as like Avengers Doomsday. It's like universes are literally smashing together. Like that's what we're going for here. That was the big end-all reveal that like you spent all this time setting up, so like that's just more so goes to the fact of like, okay, this is what happens when something kind of becomes more popular than it should have initially been, because I mean we all know they have multiple times been on the record the fact that they only really had planned out like that first season.
Yeah, it's just and the repetition of this is our plan. Wait, what's our plan? It's this. Joke, speak over each other. They act
use
it out
household items to explain plan.
Yeah. It's just like I know that
happened 3 different times in one episode
reference
alone.
Yeah, and I don't know. I've obviously heard that Netflix like forces their writers to kind of do this. I don't watch a lot of Netflix shows. I don't know if there's other ones that do this exact thing. Like I've seen like Mike Flanagan stuff. He doesn't do that, so I don't know.
There may be a reason why his contract with Netflix just ended and he's working on stuff for other streamers.
I mean, yeah, it feels like it is made for people to be on their phone streaming, and it's just
that's 100%. They do that.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
It's and the effects, the visuals are they're flat. And it's just all of it. And it's gotten so bad with online that it just snowballed into everything's horrible. And it's like that's unfair, but down to like the minute details, people are just like slagging it. It's just it's rough now.
It's really really tough. Like I said, I don't want to speak too much on it because like I said, as much as we got in these final three, we still have like the grandiose finale.
Obviously, they did set up, I think, for a big finale, and they could stick a landing here that will save face.
At the end of the day, though, why I don't think that this is going to be a Game of Thrones situation is for a couple reasons. One, the fact that monoculture doesn't exist anymore. And even though Stranger Things is still kind of one of these like last like bits of cultural juggernauts that people can, kind of congregate around and talk about, it's not going to have the same kind of quite impact as Game of Thrones were because that was so big and so watched and so beloved by so many people. And even when the problem started to show in the later seasons after the first four, the fact that people were still so hyped up and so excited, I already feel like that kind of wasn't the case going into this season. I feel like there was still like an initial level of skepticism, both A, due to the decrease in quality, but also B, because of the massive amount of time that occurred. So there was only a year gap between the first two seasons. There was about a 2-year gap between the second and third seasons, right? That was all pre-COVID. But since COVID, there's been 3-year gaps in between each of these seasons. Like, I mean, come on, Pat, you saw like the amount of jokes and tweets that people were making about the amount of shows that started and ended in between both Stranger Things 4th and 5th season and then throughout the entire run of Stranger Things. Like,
I actually had to watch their like recap beforehand. Like they did like a recap video. I was like, I'm glad they did this because I really like I remembered the ending of the show that that they fixed way too quickly. But everything else, I was just like, wait, who were those people in the van that they were all with? Are they back? And they aren't, which like, all right, it's enough of you guys, I guess. But I could not remember the Vecna's whole deal completely just because it's been like 3 years. It wasn't difficult to remember, but I don't know. And some of the direction, I noticed the Frank Darabont episode, the first one of these three, was easily my favorite.
Oh yeah,
of the three, and it just has scenes that I noticed just like landed way better than the two. I guess Sean Levy, not surprising.
Exactly.
It's weird because he's directed some of the better episodes.
Remember too. Also, it was the fact that Sean Levi even talked about this while he was on the press tour. It was the fact that because he was directing Deadpool and Wolverine while they were filming this, he wasn't able to be there on set and like consult and help out with the Duffer Brothers because again, Sean Levi is a big part of like the creative voice of the show.
Yeah. I mean, he did. Again, that Nancy Jonathan scene is just like it's a good scene, completely destroyed by whatever this goo is that can melt metal and not them. And I don't know.
The Dustin Steve like melodrama that was all over.
I didn't mind that stuff in its own like thing, but it was just,
but as part of the bigger whole, it's like it's just ultimately what are we doing here, And again,
11, who's supposed to be like sort of the main character of the show, is like she's there.
Besides the fact that it's so beyond clear that Millie Bobby Brown is just so ready to move on past the show, and the fact that she is voiced kind of, and that's the other thing too. Also, that Luke and I talked about as well when we covered the first couple episodes when that dropped back at Thanksgiving, is the fact that because these actors, specifically with the kid actors who are now all adults, have all their personal lives have become so much of their identity. Now it's almost like outweighing the performances that they're giving, and it's like. And so, like, it's kind of impossible to see Millie Bobby Brown now as just this character 11 without bringing in all the other baggage that we know about her in her real life. And the same as with Dave Harbour as well, and everything that we all know about how he is as a person in real life. I don't even get me started on Noah Schnapp and all the drama that started there around him.
Well, so Hopper, this confirms Hopper should have been dead after season 3.
Easily.
Season 4's storyline in Russia was like the worst, most boring, no reason thing. And he's done absolutely nothing this year except repeat his same, he exists to not trust 11 to, be a grieving fall. Like that's all he is. He doesn't he doesn't serve anything.
Also, confirmation that the Soul of 11 episode from season 2 is the worst episode because the fact that they brought
not anymore. Not
anymore,
by rating.
Yeah,
it's officially not anymore.
Because they brought back her sister from that episode, and she is like, I don't know what happened.
She can't act anymore either. She was good in that episode. She's
I like that. I like that episode like way more than people gave it credit for, and I'm just like,
I didn't think it was terrible, but
it could have been a lot worse. But yeah, ultimately, it's kind of telling how we're going to talk about again the Lost season 3 finale, which a lot of Lost fans and both just regular TV fans in general would say is one of the high points of the series and one of the best episodes, as well as talking about the finale of Pluribus. Which, say what you will, and I understand people's problems with the pacing of Pluribus, but just as far as like what you know about Vince Gilligan as a creator, how he works, how he writes, how he operates, and also in terms of like how he's so deliberately taking each episode step by step, morsel by morsel, to really, really set up this conflict and really have it be about the character of Carol and really show how her decisions, her reactions to everything are really informing the plot and the story going forward. It just really serves as such a stark contrast to this, which has really just become a by-the-numbers blockbuster that is just speeding towards a finale that I really don't know if it's going to earn ultimately, but we'll come back to that on Thursday when the big 2-hour-long finale drops. What's it called? Luke and I will be breaking that down and seeing, kind of in retrospective to Stranger Things as a whole, not just this season, how that goes. But
are they going to kill anybody?
I don't know.
I bet they don't. I bet they kill like Callie, and that's it.
That's the thing, because if there's one thing that I've learned about Stranger Things, it's the only characters that die are the bad guys and the fringe characters. They're the only ones.
I'm not looking for. I'm not looking for like a bloodbath either. Because the was like, oh, this isn't the Red Wedding. I was like, we're not asking for Red Wedding. We're asking for like stakes, dude. Like
just something.
Casualties.
Like all of last season setting up that Max was gonna die, and then they pull back last minute. It's like, come on, guys, what are we doing?
If only there was a show that set up a character's death all season, and then
paid it off in the best way possible. Exactly. But we'll get to that. But real quick, so we're going to talk about Pluribus. So, Pat, you've been watching Pluribus week by week?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on it in comparison? Because Luke and I have been recapping for the last couple weeks, but just what are your thoughts on it, especially like in comparison with the greater over, the legacy of Vince Gilligan, how this compares to like Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, and all that?
Yeah, I think had it been my first Vince Gilligan show, I probably would be a little more not whatever, but I trust this guy with his slow burns. I got into both Breaking Bad and Saul after a few seasons that already started. Right. So that's not how I'm getting into this. And you gotta register with that when you watch something. But I like that it's slow. Like, look, I'm a baseball fan. People say it's boring. I was like, I know. That's one of the things I like about it, that it's kind of boring. And again, this is just there's no characters. It's Carol, the Hive, and what's his name? Medusa. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then there's like, I know there's the people that but they're like side characters,
right?
That's the difference. So it's one thing like Saul was slow in its first season. He had people to talk to, and Jimmy is funny, and there was just more. So this is way slower, and I don't if it's not for someone because it's slow, that's fine. But I'm enjoying it, and it really takes those Gilligan moments of just taking one thing, just seeing how someone does something from beginning to end because you got the time. Yeah, we can watch Carol dig a grave and figure out how she's she can go to the store to get a head sewn and to put it on there, and we can watch it because there's nothing else to do. Yeah. So like her, there's nothing else to do.
The world is essentially ended, so it's like we kind of only have to watch. And that's again part of the appeal of the show and why we enjoyed it. It's like it's another one of those things where it's like watching a character essentially operate and figure out how to put like their life together after the world has ended. Ultimately, I feel like that's something that the early seasons of The Walking Dead did really, really well that the later seasons then kind of abandoned. But that's kind of been one of many, many things that I have loved about the show so far as we've been covering it the last couple of weeks. But really, for me, it's just the fact of, we talk about filmmaking on TV, right? And I feel like that's something that kind of gets a little bit underrated. And part of the reason why Gilligan, made such a name for himself on TV is by adding those little cinematic flourishes that we loved about Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. The fact that truly, even more so than The Sopranos was at times, it felt like you were watching a movie on TV while still maintaining those things about TV that we love. And obviously, even though Apple definitely, backed up the garbage truck full of money onto his lawn as far as the budget for this show, because good God, the fact that they gave him a straight 2-season order off a premise that for the most part, nobody even knew what this show was even going to be about going in. The only promo that we had was a little smiley face and, the woman licking the donuts, which now within the context of the show, we understand what that means. But at the time, we had no clue what this was going to be. And I just love how slow pace it was, but just how it was setting us up for something big. And really, it's funny because a lot of people might look at this as more of like an Americans-esque slow burn finale. For me, like this was perfect. This was just absolutely everything that I possibly could have wanted after the past 7 weeks of build-up. Luke, what did you think of the finale?
Yeah, I guess since I watched it, it's on Christmas Eve. I guess Christmas Eve morning. It's been marinating in my mind, and it's improved over time because this is the first Vince Gilligan show that I'm seeing in real time. I had the privilege of seeing Breaking Bad, all of it, and Better Call Saul. I caught up for season 6. I was watching it as season 6 was coming out. So I know what to expect from a Gilligan show after season 1. Season 1 is the staging show. It's sort of the affirmation of, yes, this is where the character is gonna go, and this finale is sort of the tipping point of like, oh, is she gonna? Okay, no, this is where she's gonna go for the rest of the show, and then the rest of the show is gonna be this. So I guess at first I was like, it's kind of a muted finale, but then yeah, everything made sense. Everyone went in the direction that it should, and like you said, it's one character basically. It's not an ensemble show. That's why it's a bit slower paced. So I'm excited to see
yeah, it's she. I agree with that. It's the one funny thing someone asked when it was starting, like, which kind of character would you be? Would you be Carol, or would you be the other people that are just, making the best of the situation and whatever? And I feel like the answer is probably be both. You just don't know which order you'd be.
Right.
Would you be? And Carol has literally flipped back and forth in this like finale, and yeah, it pretty much sets her in stone of what she's going to do, and now she has something important with her. And she has an ally, and so it's a very different beginning for the second season. Also, the first scene of this episode I thought was like frightening.
That sequence, we're gonna get to that sequence.
Yeah,
Put a pin in that one. But I think that what's so interesting is it's another thing of where we were talking about this a lot on Lost. We were talking about this on Severance as well when we covered that back in the spring. The idea of kind of perception of characters, right? The thing of like, okay, we get like two separate characters that are both technically on the same side, so we automatically assume our brains go to this idea that, oh, once they meet up, they're immediately going to be buddy-buddy, they're going to get along, they're going to immediately start to figure out the problem, and I love that these shows constantly are showing, no, that's not the case. That's not the case at all. Just because, like, these guys may be on the same side doesn't necessarily mean that they have, kind of the same intentions, the same methodology of dealing with the problem, and that's what I love so much about once Carla Manusos's long-awaited, long-built-up meeting finally happens. Like, this is a meeting that started with, like, just the two of them insulting each other over the phone, and then once he receives a video message and begins that long drive from Paraguay all the way up to New Mexico, a journey that takes him 2 episodes and almost kills him in the process, and he finally gets there only to discover that, oh, you're quite literally sleeping with the enemy in this case. So I thought that was a pretty funny parable and comparison point, and just their interactions were great. But, like I said, conjoined with that opening scene, there's a reason why we saw that opening scene, which is, like, one of the most haunting and frightening things that I have seen, like, ever. Like, just the way that is filmed, the way that it's posited, the fact that, again, Carol and Manusos are the only one of the 12 or 13, non-infected, if you will, that were really opposed to the hive mind takeover. How everybody else has just kind of been, like, so accepting, so willing to get along with it because their loved ones are still alive. So, therefore, they kind of just, like, want to be with their loved ones. And the fact that it's posited there, where it's, like, this one little girl who's the only member of her village in Peru who has been uninfected. So naturally, especially in parts of the world like that where, your community is like kind of your pillar, your bedrock. And so if everybody else has already joined this hive mind, you could understand the argument, but the way that it's filmed, the way that it's showed, you see like kind of the true horror, if you will, of like just truly giving up the thing that makes you human. And as she, has that very, very creepy looking smile on her face as everybody walks away from the village and you see the little goat running after her. It's frightening.
Poor goat, man.
Oh, man, that poor goat. Oh, man.
Yeah.
It was just...
that goat solidified the poor intentions.
Yeah.
Well, for now, we'll end up seeing. It could really go whatever way. It could go either way at some point.
Yeah, we'll see. And also, again, just as far as like the paying off of the threads, where and a lot of people theorize too, and it's so funny too, like how like fan theorization could like ruin some shows and like really propel and help other shows, because people were calling like weeks ago that like, oh shit, like even though Carol expressly forbade the hive mind to harvest her stem cells in order to try and find a way to infect her, they already had the eggs. They already had access to the eggs that was set up episodes ago when she told Helen that she had frozen her eggs. And again, like these blink or you'll miss it moments, but if you're paying attention, every thread kind of gets paid off ultimately, and it just really, really built up in the most satisfying way possible in that ski lodge.
And they also gave a sort of a timetable on the show. They gave Carol 40 days or something.
Something like that. There's like a month, 2 or 3
until you're done. So it gives the show a bit of a kind of a cap on it. So the first season's been 70 days. I guess.
Something I mean, like
just about it's been like a month through the first, like more than the first half, and then they kind of rushed through her alone part. But yeah. So I think it's gonna be a very different show when it comes back. Maybe not different, but it's gonna move a little bit quicker.
And I'm very excited. And unfortunately, it will be a 2-year-long gap because, again, they're still in the writers' room right now. They're really trying to figure out where it's going to go. It's one of those things where it's like the writers are going to have to take their time if they want to get this right. But it's one of those few things where I'm like, I'm okay with them taking their time. You know, like this won't be a Severance situation. And I know that there were a lot of other reasons as to why Severance took so long to come back. But that, I don't know why, but like that one it just felt a little bit more frustrating versus this one is like, no, I am more than okay with Vince and the team taking their time because as we've seen, when they deliver, they fucking deliver. And I am more than excited for what the show has in store for us for the future couple of seasons. I was very, very impressed with this first season. Slow burn, yes, but what's it called? Deliberately so, ultimately. And I think that's kind of the key difference that kind of its critics and naysayers have been missing. So, gentlemen, we've delayed it long enough. Let's get to it. The reason for this podcast, the reason why we are all here, Lost, the season 3 finale through the looking glass. So, Pat, just to give some context, this is Luke's first time watching through the show.
Yeah, so no spoilers. I got you.
Well,
for the entire
I've already guessed what's going to happen.
That's what's so funny about that is, again, I haven't had to spoil anything because almost everything that has happened or is going to happen yet throughout the course of the show, he has guessed. Like, this guy is one of the most, like, I don't think I have ever done a better job of matching up a person with a show than with Luke, with Lost. Like, Luke, tell Pat literally about the dreams that you've been having.
Dude, I have since the last episode, I had 2 more dreams related to the island. Like, I think it's because of this episode. It hit me so hard. I'm like, okay, this is the greatest show I've ever seen. One, I was Jack and I had a jetpack and I was flying around the island. And another one, there was a boat because there's a boat in the show, and there were a bunch of smaller boats, but nothing too significant. But again, many trips to the island have been made.
What was it that we were talking about a couple of weeks, Luke, where you were like, okay, I feel like this show is either going to involve time travel, this show is going to involve like faking their deaths, and what was the third thing that you theorized that was also going to happen?
I said it was when Naomi landed on the island and said, oh no, they found the plane. I immediately like sprouted 3 theories. I said either one, there's 2 planes, one that crashed and one that crashed in the sea, one that crashed on the island. 2, there's someone's covering up, so someone planted the fake plane. Or 3, the island is in its own little time bubble situation.
And I was literally like, I don't know how you did it, but somehow you guess all 3 things, and all 3 of those things are true and do happen on the show. When they will happen, I don't know. But what's it called? But so like that was just impressive in and of itself. So Pat, you have both watched the show, and if I'm not mistaken, you watched the show while it was airing on ABC in real time, correct?
I did, yeah.
So that means you watched this episode.
It was one of those frustrating things when it used to air because the first like 2 seasons, you never knew when it was on. It would be like there'd be the running joke. It used to be on like the IMDb message board, and every Wednesday there'd be a new post. It was tonight's episode of Rerun, and that just became a running joke that every Wednesday they would ask. Even if the show wasn't on Wednesdays, I would pop up on whatever. And finally, this like 3rd season, they did that block of 6 episodes. The first 6 episodes were aired in the fall with the the Kate Dammit run cliffhanger, and then we had to wait 3 months. And in that time period, that 3-month time period, it was revealed that they had set an end date for the show. So for the first time, we were like, the show has an end point. And I think about a third of the way through these last episodes, or last 16, you can really feel that they kick things into more of a gear than they've really been unable to. Yeah, especially with network TV of 20 plus episodes at a time, you just couldn't do it back then.
Yeah, Luke and I were talking really specifically about this last stretch of episodes really that we've been covering in December. That includes, the Brig, the Man Behind the Curtain, last week's greatest hits, which was the lead up to this, and now obviously with this finale. And
it's the best lead up to a finale. Honestly, it might have been that they've ever done, but probably one of the best I've seen. They've always done that so well every year. Every year they do that like perfectly. The lead up to the finale.
But this one in particular, I feel like is really special because, like we were also talking about, this was kind of the make or break. Because the thing about season 3 when it was airing is the fact that at this point, like the ratings were starting to suffer a little bit because, like you said, people were kind of a little bit frustrated with the scheduling and how it was doing it with the content mystery and build up and like, okay, are they ever gonna give us any answers? And so it was the fact that we were talking about how episodes this season like Stranger in a Strange Land and Expose were kind of like forced the writers.
I love Expose.
I love Expose. It was awesome. It was
only Lost could have a show.
Only Lost could have an episode like that. It's a wild episode of TV. But like at the time, you're kind of just like watching. You're like, what the hell is going on with this right now?
Yeah, that was the issue with week to week, because it would come on. You'd be like, oh, what are we gonna get tonight? What's new? And it would be that, and people would like lose their shit. They'd just be like, that is bullshit, you know.
Right.
And
understandable at the time, given the formatting and the release strategy and schedule. But what's so like crucial about Through the Looking Glass, and why this is not only one of the best episodes of the show, but one of the most important episodes of the show, is because this is the episode that ends the flashbacks and introduces the flash forward timeline structure ultimately, which was the thing that really shook the foundation of the show, which had been grounded around these character individual flashbacks, which were kind of a source of a lot of the criticism of season 3, where by the time we got to season 3 with the flashbacks, we're like, okay, we kind of already feel like we know everything we need to know about those characters. A lot of the flashbacks are repetitive, or in the case of Stranger, and strangely just bad and unnecessary. But with this case, it's like we, you know, and especially with the way that that these 2-part episodes work, you know, with the individual Jack flashbacks, or so we think, in the way they're posed, and then with the twist at the end when he meets with Kate at the airport, and you realize, oh no, this is taking place in the future, which raises all sorts of new questions. It was really a way to lock audiences back in. Like, it's funny, I've been reading, I read a couple months ago this companion book that was written about Lost Back to the Island, that was like one of those books that like broke down and recapped every single episode. And in the section about this episode, they talked about how this episode kind of literally saved the show, because the ratings for this finale were so high and audiences were so locked back into the show in a way that they really hadn't been for the last couple of weeks, that it really, you know, was allowed them to maintain that momentum throughout the next 3 seasons. Not to mention the fact that this was the last season of the show that ran the kind of traditional fall to spring, with only like, you know, the couple months in between for the winter, because every season going forward would air in one block in the spring. You know, season 4 is the writer's strike season, so that's only about like 12 or 13 episodes. And then the latter couple seasons are only about 16, 17 episodes, that all ran in one block in the spring, which was really kind of foundational for TV going forward as well, because long before the streaming era started, nobody did that. Yeah. So we've been talking about it a lot. We kind of knew everything that was going to go back in. And what's interesting, too, about it is the fact that because so much of this finale was set up in last week's episode, Greatest Hits, you know, kind of our goodbye to Charlie, them getting ready, you know, the dueling plots that they're going to ambush the others when they come and attack the beach. And then Jack is also leading the exposition to the radio tower in order to signal Naomi's freight. So we have all these plot lines that have already kind of been set up. So that really allows us to, once we hit this episode, we hit the ground running. And so it really sets us up for a new and differently paced kind of Lost, not just finale, but episode in general. Because even in comparison to the last 2 finales, you know, Exodus and then Live Together, Die Alone, I would say that this episode really just has like kind of a forward thrust and kind of does not stop until the very end. So, Luke, do you want to talk about the kind of what happens in the flash forwards and how they set up, or do you want to talk about the just kind of everything that happens on the island first?
I figured we do the flash forwards after, because it's more about what's going to happen next.
What's going to happen? All right.
Literally
So basically,
on
the island.
I guess one thing I want to say before we start, what I liked more about this finale than the last one was more like, oh, what is going to happen when they don't push the button? Finally, it's like this sort of question that's been surrounding, and this one is more like, okay, we kind of know what's going to happen, and let's see what that's going to be like, and what the implications of that are going to be. It's not like we're anticipating some kind of answer. We want to just see what happens. So it's more story action-y kind of storytelling. So
exactly. And more faith in delivery of something. You know, like what's going to happen when a button doesn't get pushed. It's like what can they possibly do that's going to deliver? And you know,
not to mention the fact that it feels more grandiose. It feels more like, you know, kind of overall impact. Whereas the button storyline across season 2 felt so isolated and felt so contained ultimately that. But with this finale, it feels like, okay, we know there's a boat. We know that now, finally, for the first time since the start of the show, the survivors have a chance to be rescued, ultimately. You know, it's not just about, like, kind of exploring what there is to know about on the island. You know, it actually feels like the story has reached kind of this apex point, this natural jumping off point. You know, there was probably a universe in which, you know, had this ended a different way rather than on another cliffhanger. Ultimately, this kind of could have been the series finale if they had so chosen. I'm glad that they couldn't, because the last 3 seasons ultimately go the way that they go, but that ultimately kind of, you know, the what if of Lost is always very interesting, especially because it was that kind of show that really was always like kind of playing around with all the different possibilities. So we're on to
it closes Act 1, this finale, pretty much.
Exactly. So we're on the island. Jack and Saeed are planning for the ambush of the others. Saeed makes Jack swear to not stop on their journey to the radio tower for anything. You have a couple goodbyes, you know, especially since, you know, the 3 people who are staying behind, 2 of them have significant others, you know, Jen and Bernard with Sun and Rose. Hurley reassures Claire that Charlie is fine, you know, despite the fact that down in the Looking Glass station, things aren't necessarily as they seem. Juliet spying on Naomi, suspicious, and then the group, begins on their journey toward the radio tower. On the trip, Naomi asks Jack what he does. He tells her that he's a doctor. Naomi voices her suspicions of Juliet and then shows Jack how to use the satellite phone. Very, very, subtle foreshadowing, showing that, in case anything happens to me. At the Looking Glass station, Charlie is beaten and interrogated by the two others. They ask how Charlie found the station. He tells them about Juliet, signifying that, okay, Juliet has officially, revealed her triple nature status. She is now on the survivor side. She is no longer on Ben's side. Charlie notes the radio room, remembers Desmond's warning, and one of them radios Ben to warn him. Ben tells Mikhail to go to the Looking Glass station to deal with Charlie. However, key point here, though, Mikhail did not know that the Looking Glass station was even operable, showing that, once again, Ben's kind of leadership, Ben's kind of, tyranny that he's had over the others is sort of starting to crumble. Richard is doubting him. Mikhail is doubting him. He's starting to give orders that are, kind of undermining them. Tom is even doubting him on the beach, ultimately. So you're already seeing all these threads kind of throughout that, everything that throughout this episode, everything that we have kind of come to know about, kind of the leadership structure, at least as far as the others, is falling apart. The reason why the others who traditionally have been so successful in their kind of attack and pursuit of our mainland survivors is really falling apart, because now that Ben's kind of, foibles have been exposed, ultimately, you're seeing now that, he really only had, such a loose grip that was really all revolved around, his blatant manipulation of everybody around him. But now that you have, everybody is starting to see through, what he has going for him, you really see, I feel like this is kind of this is a major episode for Ben in terms of, the majority of the power that he's held throughout, both before the events of the show and into the events of the show are really kind of, coming to an end.
Yeah, there's a lot of fracturing going around the others. It almost seems like now the beach crew are in control of the situation to some extent, because there's so much conflict going around between the others. At the beginning, Ben's take them to the temple. What the hell's the temple? I guess we're gonna see that in the next season. And then, of course, there's a decision not to kill Jin, Saeed, and
Bernard,
the dentist, Bernard. I just referred to how they referred to him.
Well, considering the fact that I don't think we saw him for all of season 3, until this finale, I could understand why the name would be forgotten. But so basically, after that, on the beach, the others begin their assault. They sneak into the camp. Saeed and Bernard, they fire successfully the dynamite. They blow up. I think it's 7 of the guys. They end up blowing up. Jin unfortunately misses. It starts a firefight, leads to all them being captured. Inland, Jack argues with Rose and Sun about the success of the ambush. Rose and Sun want to go back to check and see if they're okay, but Jack is like, no, we got to keep going. We have to make it to the radio tower against all odds if we want to have any chance of getting off the island. At the Looking Glass, Charlie confesses to the captors that he's there to turn off the jamming equipment, and that no matter what happens, he will turn it off. The two women ask him what the passcode is. Charlie tells him it ultimately doesn't matter, that the station is going to flood, and that if he has to die in order for his friends to escape, he will, getting into a little bit of the predestination there. At the beach, Tom talks on the radio with Ben. The survivors knew they were coming, but they've captured them. Ben tells him to shoot Jin, which basically provokes Bernard in order to spill his guts about Naomi, the hike to the radio tower, that they were warned by Carl. Like I said, it's kind of impressive how much this episode does revolve around Ben and his reactions.
You're in the first 20 minutes here. That's about it. Yeah, pretty much.
Because it's interesting because what's revealed kind of about Ben's motivations here, because Ben's motivations, other than, his kind of need for control that we saw in his flashback episode, this is the first episode that really kind of clues you into there is a reason why Ben has been doing what he has been doing, trying to keep the island shrouded in so much mystery, and his reason for kind of his ironclad hold over the others. And it shows that, later on in the episode, once he, meets up with Jack and the survivors, he is ultimately very much trying to prevent them from radioing out for help. He even says it, and unfortunately, it is his suspicions are confirmed once you see how the episode, how this, these 2 episodes end. Ultimately, is that he is very, very worried about kind of outside forces that mean to do the island harm, fighting them. And as he tells Jack, when they eventually rendezvous later on, he's like, do not trust Naomi. She is not who she says she is. She is not here to rescue you. And if you make that call, then all of you are going to die ultimately. And, Pat, you and I obviously know, going into season 4, ultimately the freighter season, that some of that doesn't end up happening, but a lot of that does turn out to be true, especially once we discover who the person is that Ben fears so much, as far as coming to the island and causing it harm.
Yeah, I think it's clear by the end of this season that the others all retreat to the temple, so them being a threat is to the main cast is kind of pretty much gone. It feels like they all retreated. They're not coming after the main cast anymore. So what is going to be the problem? you know, that's kind of how the season leaves off, that there's going to be an issue. And obviously the flash forward makes it, we'll get into it, but it makes it, you know, apparently even like, obviously, again, not good. Like there's going to be a problem. Yeah, that's why it was cool. It really set up like, you know, there's going to be another dire situation coming. You know, Ben says, I think, you know, if you make that call, it's the beginning of the end, which again,
right
now,
the title of next season,
and title of episode 1 of season 4,
exactly. So more subtle foreshadowing.
Which I got a huge charge out of reading in the year-long wait when I saw like that's the title of episode 1. Like that's all I had back then.
Right, exactly. Like that's all I
was like, oh, that's the title and it's awesome, and you know.
Wait, you mean you weren't on the early Lost chat boards and Reddit Reds?
Oh yeah, it was IMDb message board. That was it.
Yeah, that's right.
That's all there was.
That's what it was. That's what it was. Oh man,
they started like a Lost Wikipedia at some point, but that wasn't really, you know. Yeah, it's all you had. All your theories. You know, that's where you discussed it. That's all you had back then.
Absolutely insane. Ultimately, really truly getting a blast from the past. So yeah, obviously, what's it called? Basically, once Bernard, you know, tells him about all of their plans, that they were warned by Carl. Ben realizes that Alex told Carl to warn them. He tells Tom to hold off on killing the captives. Tells Richard to bring the rest of the others to the temple, while Alex demands to go with Ben. Ben agrees. You know, saying that, you know, he knows that she wants to see Carl again. Kate confront, you know, back with the survivors. Kate confronts Sawyer at the river. Sawyer is also just, you can clearly tell, like very, very traumatized after the brig. But that's kind of important too, you know, Sawyer's role in this episode as well. You know, Luke going back to after the events of the brig changed Sawyer ultimately for the better. And while it took a couple of episodes for us to like kind of see the results, you see that like kind of the reluctant hero, the, you know, the kind of the rogue bad guy Sawyer, that's kind of gone now after the events of the brig. You know, now that he has finally like concluded that arc, that part of his life, he finally got revenge on the man who ruined his life. You finally see that like he's out now, kind of able to put the more roguish elements of his personality behind him. And
he's a little aimless. He doesn't know what to do now with his life.
A little traumatized.
He's achieved his one goal.
But it shows ultimately, you know, he finally steps up and becomes kind of the hero that we all knew that he was. And he's still not the best guy ultimately. It shows when he, you know, when he kills Tom in cold blood at the end of this episode. But it shows that like, Sawyer ultimately at the end decides to, you know, of his own free will and volition too, against Jack's direct orders, being like, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna check and see what's going on, because, you know, they should have caught up to us by now. And then Juliet obviously volunteers to go with him, show him where the guns are ultimately, and then Hurley also decides to go with them as well. So you've got kind of a little bit of like, even early on, and you're gonna see this is a major also theme, you know, a little bit of the fracturing of the goals of the survivors ultimately. You know, not obviously everybody has the same thoughts and mentalities and you know, and goals going forward anymore. You know, meanwhile, Desmond wakes up on the boat after having been knocked out by Charlie. He realizes Charlie swam down by himself, shot at by Mikhail from the beach, swims down to the looking glass station. Charlie tells Desmond to hide. Charlie then starts annoying the captors to the point where they almost find Desmond, who's hiding in a locker, but just then Mikhail resurfaces. More surprised, like Mikhail is just being surprised all throughout this episode. He's like, so Ben told me that the looking glass was flooded. He told me that it was inoperable. He's like, I thought that you two were on assignment in Canada. He's like, he's like, why are we jamming all signals? Like, Ben is not been very forward with Mikhail ultimately. And I guess it's probably a good thing that Mikhail ultimately does meet his end here, because I feel like if he had survived this, he definitely would have some choice words for Ben, as you also see when he communicates. It really sucks that Mikhail does meet his end here, because that you do want to talk about a guy who had a potential to be like a really interesting character going forward. But at the same time, he also, like I said, as I've said on record, is my favorite other ultimately.
Yeah. And I thought he'd be like a Quaritch character who just keeps coming back. Like, you think he dies awesome, and he just keeps coming back.
That would have been awesome.
We all did. We all thought that. We were just like, oh, all right, I guess you're
like, oh, I guess that's it. Yeah. I mean, also the dude that like clearly the island favored the most before Locke, because I mean, so I swear to God, the amount of times that this guy has died and been brought back to life, like it's kind of insane. That happens again in this episode, you know. So he answers he answers an incoming message from Ben, chews him out for not telling anyone. Ben tells Mikhail to have trust and faith in him and Jacob. And that's kind of the other thing too. Also, Ben is constantly flippantly whipping out Jacob's name as a means of like exerting control, even though we all know from the Man Behind the Curtain episode that his relationship with Jacob is clearly not is all based once again on duplicity and secrecy and manipulation. That his relationship with Jacob is not at all what he has led us and the characters to believe. But basically, he instructs him to kill Charlie and the girls. And then part one, the island plot ends with, again, this is the only scene we see of Locke in the part one of it, where Locke wakes up in the pit after having been shot by Ben, sees Walt, Is it Walt? Presumably, yet another island vision.
Walt, who's supposed to be only like 2 months older than he was in the first episode.
Yeah, he was 10. Now he's 14.
Now he's 14. Actually, I think he's like more so like 16 in real life or something like that. But telling Locke that his part is not over, showing that so once again we're seeing parallels there where Mikhail obviously meets his end of this episode, but it shows that the island is not done with Locke yet. Even though he once again got duped and by Ben, who shot him in the chest and left him for dead in the pit of the Dharma skeletons. He still is very much alive and very much still going. Then we get into part 2. Basically, they're almost to the tower. Jack asked Russo when the last time she was there. She responds the day that she recorded the message, and then they run into Ben and Alex, who say they need to talk. At the looking glass station, Mikhail kills the 2 guards. Desmond emerges and shoots Mikhail with the harpoon before he can finish off the one girl. Charlie says to spare her because they need the code in order to disable the jamming equipment. Back on the island, Jack asks Ben what he wants. So they talk. This is the first instance where Ben tells Jack that Naomi is not who she is, that she's not there to rescue them, that she represents people who mean to do them harm. Says that if they phone Naomi's boat, every person on the island will die. And Jack at this point is just beyond being manipulated with people. We see that also when Locke, surprisingly makes his appearance at the end of the episode. He's tired of being manipulated by Ben. He's tired by being manipulated by Locke. He's like, I only have one goal here, and that is to, fulfill the leadership role that everybody has deigned on to me and to get us off this fucking island. And you and your mother and nobody else is going to stop me from this, And of course, Ben is doing that thing that all bad guys do, where he's being unnecessarily cryptic and vague, We obviously, Pat, you and I obviously know that Ben has an idea and knows who is on that boat, but obviously at the time, he can't tell the audience because the writers
you can't trust him. Yeah, that's clear. Can't trust anything he says. So,
right, but also it's because Damon Lindelof himself didn't know who was going to be on the boat. Ultimately, the only reveal that we get is obviously at the end. Once Charlie finally disables the transmission and receives Penny's message that it's not her boat that she sent. She's not on the boat. It's only then, but up until this point, the writers clearly didn't know who was on the boat, so we just had to assume that this was going to be more manipulation for Ben. So. And then he tells Tom to kill Jin, Saeed, and Bernard. But obviously that's revealed to be, duplicitous. Now, whether that was an order from Ben or whether that was Tom taking initiative of himself because he also does not trust Ben and is losing faith in Ben's leadership. Regardless of whether or not that happens, it fools Jack into thinking that. But so which finally caused him to beat Ben into submission. Very, very satisfactorily so for everybody who would been kind of waiting for something like this to happen for about a couple seasons or now. And we also get a long way to reunion where Russo finally reunites with her long lost daughter Alex, and Ben is kind of forced to admit that. It's like, Alex, meet your real mother, Russo. And so it's like, we had already kind of put 2 and 2 together, considering that they did very, very, very good casting, with Mia Furlan and Tanya Ramond as Russo and Alex. They look very, very similar. So I thought that was really, really good casting there. But ultimately on the beach, it's Hurley, Sawyer, and Juliet are able to save Saeed, Bernard, and Jan. Hurley drives the Dharma van, nice little Chekhov's van there, if you will, into the camp. He kills the one leader. Saeed, we get some more cool Saeed action. He snaps the one dude's neck, and then Sawyer kills Tom in cold blood, as revenge for kidnapping Walt, ultimately, so the people on the beach are safe. Ben is ultimately captured. He's tied up. They disable Russo's tower. Naomi makes the call. Things are seeming good, and then all of a sudden Locke shows up, boom, throws a knife into Naomi's back. Naomi's gone now all of a sudden. So Luke, when you saw that, what was your immediate thought when you're like, oh shit, what's going on here? What's gonna happen next?
I guess I was waiting for Locke to do something. I didn't expect him to show up with the main party. But I didn't know what I was expecting to do was that you kills Naomi. Okay, Naomi's gonna be like this character and going forward in season 4. Nope. Just completely do that. So Locke is fully back on the island's mission. He had the crisis of faith in the island at the end of season 2 with the button, and this season's been all over the place. He's blowing up stations and submarines to keep everyone on the island. So yeah, Locke's role is fully locked in. If you will, fully unfortunately, I have to, if you will, force and
of course, after Charlie successfully disabled the jamming, station, I'll save that for in a little bit. Basically, you have this one more standout, the last of, if you will. I mean, obviously, the man of science versus man of faith kind of continuation, but really, you can tell that the full-on conflict between Jack and Locke is at a head here, where Locke again wants to stay on the island, is very much against the idea of anybody wanting to get to the island. He almost wants to take Ben's mission of protecting the island and taking that to a new level, like a steroid-esque level. He really truly wants to protect this island that has given him back everything that the real world kind of robbed him of. And versus Jack, who just wants to help these poor people get rescued ultimately. And, and it's even interesting because Ben even brings up that point, kind of tying it as well, where it's like, what do you even want to get back to? This job that kind of took everything from you, your dead dad, your wife who left you and got, and had another man's kid. Like, what exactly is it that you have to get back to? Just more manipulation on Ben's part that, like I said, Jack is just beyond sick and tired of and dealing with. Jack is just done being manipulated by everyone. And you can even see it too, where, again, the difference between Locke and Ben is that Ben ultimately do whatever it takes in order to prevent that call from going out, versus Locke, even though he threatens to kill Jack still makes the call, and Locke at the end of the day puts the gun down and is like, oh man, you shouldn't have done that. And he kind of just walks off. So I guess you could say that, like, okay, if, knowing what we know about Locke, if Locke had really meant to, like, really truly protect the island, he would have done what he needed to do. But it really just shows that, like, at the end of the day, Locke and Jack have been through, like, kind of this communal experience. They did both crash on this island, even though they have had diametrically opposing reactions to the island and reactions to their take on the island and whether they want to save everybody or not. At the end of the day, he understands that Jack is going to do what he has to do. And he's kind of like accepting that and moving on, being like, okay, whatever happens next, happens next. So I thought that was a really, really interesting character moment. And it ends ultimately with them making the call out. And Jack gets in touch with Minkowski, who tells him that they're survivors of Oceanic Flight 815. Minkowski says that he's going to send the rescue chopper. So that leaves the last two major moments, which are the reveal of the flash forwards and not Penny's boat. So like I said, I've been hyping it up all season. I've been hyping this up really since the beginning of the first season. We had the build up, our goodbye to Charlie episode last week with obviously with the title Greatest Hits, how that episode was kind of all centered around Charlie ultimately taking stock of his life and all of the moments of his life, which he is otherwise regarded as kind of a waste, and seeing the 5 moments that actually meant something, that were actually impactful. And now we're here. This is, like I said, this is a top 5 most iconic Lost moment. You could go up to any Lost fan, you could say not Penny's boat, and they will immediately burst out into tears because of the emotional resonance that comes with it, with the Giacchino score playing, where Charlie, after him and Desmond have dealt with Mikhail to get the code is ultimately synced to Good Vibrations from the Beach Boys, so it helps that, okay, this is also, kind of tying it in with this was always Charlie's destiny.
It's like a small thing that you didn't really need, but if they do it, it's like,
but it's a little extra character tidbit that works, where it's like, okay, only a musician would have been able to figure this out. So, of course, this is why this had to be Charlie. He types in the code, he gets a transition from Penny. She tells him, like, whose boat, who's Naomi, which shows that, again, maybe Ben was right. Maybe, that boat does not have their best interests, all in mind. But before anything can happen, before they can react to it, he sees Mikhail's body is gone. He sees Mikhail has swimmed outside. He has the grenade primed and ready. He closes the door just in time to save Desmond. Mikhail blows the hatch, kills himself. The hatch starts to flood in, and Charlie, at the last seconds of his life, pulls out the Sharpie and writes "Not Penny's boat" on his hand, presses it against the porthole. Desmond is ultimately helpless to watch his friend die. And then, again, one of the most beautiful moments, and Jack Bender, the director of this episode, even talked about this on the Lost documentary, of where when Charlie finally drowns, when he finally meets his last moment, he does the whole, church savior thing. I don't know what that thing is called, the Father, Son, or Holy
Sign of the Cross.
The Sign of the Cross, exactly.
Yeah.
He finally does that. And it's a really, really tear-jerking. Like I said, it was really, really heavily choreographed and cataloged out in the last episode, but still, it's a goodbye to a character that, while problematic at points, ultimately I think earned to be a fan favorite. And this is definitely one of the more iconic moments. Pat, what was it like watching this, like, in real time when it first aired?
I mean, the early episode when Charlie the flashes before your eyes, where he's told he's going to die.
Right.
It's this thing through the whole season. This part of this whole season. I remember when we got to the Greatest Hits episode, everyone always used to wonder whose episode was going to be about tonight. That was a big thing. It helped with anticipation. If it was a Kate episode, everyone was like, "Oh fuck, here we go."
Nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah. But when everyone saw that it was Charlie for the penultimate episode, everyone was just like, "Oh no," because people in their own episode have been a little less lucky on this show, and he's obviously got the biggest cloud hanging over him. That episode was like a huge tearjerker for everyone, and then to then know that next was the finale, it was just like, well, he can still go in this, and they had to do it, they had to deliver on it, and it was just beautifully done. This show does death as well as any show.
I'd say even before Game of Thrones, this was a show that really, really nailed it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it was it helped even propel the show. This episode needed a big death to send the show going forward, along with everything else that it did. So it's just another layer to why this finale was Yeah, so good.
Yeah, so impactful. And again, really, I talked about this on last week's episode, but I'll talk about it again here real quick, where it's like, again, shout out to Dominic Monaghan, the actor. Like I said, probably the most well-recognized actor going into this show, obviously because of Lord of the Rings. And the fact that Lindelof even approached him and be like, yeah, if you want, we could find a way to show you that, like, oh, maybe Charlie survives, maybe he swam up. Monahan was like, no, if this is what's needed for the story, then, like, I'm perfectly willing to, and it's funny because, again, so many actors most of the time are trying to contest that because they're like, oh no, I'm losing this, like, this is my livelihood ultimately, that I'm losing it. But the fact that, like, he was like that conscious and willing to accept willing to accept his fate, if you will. Once again, more so one of those instances where, like, the actor's real life choice mirroring the character's choice, of, like, kind of accepting their destiny, if you will, is very, very prevalent. And the fact that Lindelof is so willing to play around with these ideas and themes in such a mature manner, I feel like in a way that most shows try to shy away from. Ultimately, this idea of predestination, of this cataloged fate for you, and you can ultimately try and fight it, or you can accept it and embrace it, and you maybe, and the fact that, like, it really is the perfect summation of all of Charlie's choices. And part of what we've talked about on this show, and really the reason for why we're doing this, besides the fact of wondering, like, does Lost hold up, is this idea of, characters ultimately getting something out of tragedy. Ultimately, this idea of that Lindelof played around with this very, very heavily as well in The Leftovers, this idea of finding the joy after major tragic events, how each one of these characters is on this island seemingly chosen, if you will. We're going to get to that, obviously, once we cover that in later seasons, how, characters ultimately are there on the island. The island is there to, like, kind of fulfill a piece of them that they were missing in the real world. In Locke's case, it's the idea of giving him back his legs. In Sawyer's case, it's the idea of giving him the man who ruined his life, and all of these characters are ultimately here in order to find some sense of closure. And with Charlie, it's the idea of he finally gets to be the hero ultimately of somebody's story. This idea of he was always posited as this, like, punk rock star, who always saw himself as, ultimately being greater, but was weighed down by things like drug addiction, like, problematic friends, family connections, ultimately. And it shows, like, why this is the perfect end to his story, his arc, if you will, that was set up so perfectly with Greatest Hits, is the fact that, he ultimately felt like his life ultimately didn't amount to much. The fact that he really was only able to come up with 5 moments from his life that were really, really, truly meaningful. But the fact that he ultimately gets to sacrifice himself so that the rest of the people who he has come to know and love, especially with Claire and Aaron, the fact that Desmond even told him in the last episode that, like, okay, Claire and Aaron will get on a chopper and will get off this island, but only if you do this thing that will surely result in your death this time. It really ultimately is telling, and the relationship that he formed with Desmond, short as it was really meaningful. And it's really sad, like we talked about this, also the fact that, Boone and Shannon were part of the original 14, but, like, the less said about those two, the better. But the fact that Charlie is the first, like, really important member of that initial group of survivors that we first met all the way back in that first season that dies, it really means something ultimately. And the fact that this showed that, like, Lost was not afraid to write off, characters and really have it mean something. It's really telling. It shows that, like, yeah, Charlie's going to be missed, and and ultimately he would never be forgotten as the rest of the show went on. So the only other, I feel like, kind of future character death that kind of came close to this was Opie's death on the 5th season of Sons of Anarchy, but that one was done in, like, a much more schlocky and soap opera-y way, as we know Sons of Anarchy was very famous and well known for. Luke, so after finally seeing it play out in real time, what did you think of the Not Penny's boat moment, an iconic moment in Lost history and fandom?
Yeah, I guess this brings us to the last thing of Lost that I was aware of before the show. I knew there were some numbers. I knew there was some sort of bunker. I knew that there was some giant question mark that you could see from up above, which was less significant than I thought it would be. And I had somewhere seen the image of Charlie behind, like, the little wall. Yeah. And he's in the water, so I'm like, okay, this is where it's going. That after this, I know nothing. I've only guessed everything, apparently. So it is really well built up, and it's this thing with character deaths in, like again with Stranger Things. It's like a thing like, oh, who's gonna die? Isn't it? You don't need to kill off character just for the sake of doing it. Like, here it's built up. You need to give it weight, and then the death feels earned, I guess. It's a big story changing moment. Game of Thrones, I guess, like, sort of popularized it, of like, oh, we're just going to kill off the main characters, but each one is serves the story. It's not just like, oh, we're just going to scratch a name off a list. So again, this has been one of the
lists, another thing that Lost loves to deal with, right?
Yeah. I don't know yet.
Just you wait. Like I said, we had the manifest list, and then Ben mentioned, at the beginning of the season, I want lists in 3 days when he sent the two others, Ethan and Goodwin, to infiltrate the two camps. And like the Lost loves its list going all the way up to the final season. The only other thing that we really have to cover about this final section, this final stretch, are the flashbacks or flash forwards. And again, what's so interesting about this, obviously, again, anybody who's watched the show knows that this is the episode that introduced the idea of the flash forwards, which would be kind of the replacement for the flashbacks, which the show would popularize ultimately. And I think what's so interesting about kind of it is a bait and switch ultimately, where it is setting you up to think that this is yet another Jack flashback. But then about halfway through, once you make certain references, you start to kind of put pieces together. You're like, wait a minute, like this isn't just another Jack flashback. This doesn't really make sense. And then you get where you see Jack kind of, going through all these different things, essentially being a depressed sad boy. He's about to jump off a bridge. He's downing pills. He's essentially become his dad now. He's trying to perform surgery while under the influence. There was, he's let go from his job, and ultimately, results in this big climactic confrontation at the airport with Kate, which is kind of the big giveaway of like, oh shit, like, no, this is taking place in the future, which besides the fact that this was such a game-changing moment for Lost and its storytelling structure and its appeal, also locked the audience in, because now, like you said, Luke, Lost answers one question and gives us 2 or 3 more. I literally have written down like 3 questions that the introduction of the flash forwards introduced. The infamous, like I said, the other infamous Lost meme that this episode introduced was the whole "we have to go back." Famously, when Jack confronts Kate, ultimately being like, yeah, so I use that golden pass to fly from LA to Tokyo, hoping that the plane will crash and that we'll see them. So I wrote down 3 questions that are posed ultimately from the reveal, if you will, that these are flash forwards, not flashbacks. What happened when they were rescued? So we know a couple things off of this. We know that they were rescued, and we know that certain people, not just Jack and Kate, but certain people did make it off the island. But so the questions that are fulfilled are: what happened when they got rescued? Who's in the casket at the funeral that Jack visits? Because the other thing, too, is that Jack visits a funeral parlor with a closed casket that he then tells Kate, like, oh, did you go to the funeral? Alluding that it is someone that they knew from their time at the island. That will not be revealed who that is at the casket until the season 4 finale. Literally, it's actually funny because literally to the point where they actually, prior to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, actually shot like multiple different versions of that finale in order to try and throw off the scent of people, because people were already starting to like try and make guesses and fan theories and start to sneak onto sets in order to leak stuff. And who was in the casket at the funeral, who made it off the island, and who got left behind. So Luke, so how early did you guess that these were going to be flash forwards and not flashbacks?
I did not guess until Kate walked out of the shadows in a very, very Marvel-like moment, like Nick Fury walks out of the shadows. Like it's pretty sense. It's like the last scene of the show, of the season. From the beginning, I was like, this feels off. Jack has a beard. He's never had a beard before. Jack's trying to
I grew mine in honor of
the facial hair. It's always the dead giveaway.
Jack's trying to kill himself. He's never done that. He's never been like addicted to drugs or alcohol. This is weird. Is he dreaming? No. Okay, I would just keep watching, because the other half of the finale is too intense to like keep too much focus on this. But like, okay, Claire is back. I saw her name's not Claire, but she's Claire on Modern Family. So she's only Claire to me.
Yeah, Sarah, I think is
Sarah.
Her name.
Yeah, that's the one. So she's back for a bit. I'm like, okay. We just gotta keep watching, and then like, by the time he goes to the airport, it's like, oh, okay, this is the future. And then I'm like, ugh. And then Dom tells me that, yes, this is going to continue. This is not a one-off. This is going to continue. Like, no, this is too much.
Yes, exactly.
But the more I think about it, it's the biggest swing they could have done to get audience locked back in. And it's the most logical one, because with these characters, you want to show them before the island, which they've done. You want to show them on the island, which they're doing the whole time, but you also want to show them what happens when they get off the island. And you couldn't just do like, okay, they get off the island in what, season 5? I'm just theorizing here. They go off the island season 5, and then season 6 is them off the island. That's just kind of boring. So what do? You show them off the island before they get off the island, and that's just like okay, you guys are really pretty smart for doing that, and it's very ballsy indeed. So And then Breaking Bad did that, like how many
Yep.
years later?
Yep,
So
exactly. It
Yeah.
shows that, like, real again, that Lost was breaking. Once again, another instance in terms of how Lost was breaking the mold in terms of television storytelling. So, Pat, watching this in real time and like witnessing the reveal that these are flash forward, that like, oh shit, going forward, we're gonna be seeing like in conjunction, we're gonna be following the characters in the events after they got off the island. And also, we're going to be witnessing what happens in the immediate after effect of, of everything that's happened on the island in this season 3 finale. So how was it like seeing that in real time?
Yeah, well, there was one issue with it. The day of one of those message boards I was on, full on had a spoiler in the title.
You got spoiled.
Tonight's episode is a flash forward. And I was like, whatever. And then the second it started with Jack's beard, I was just like, oh no.
they were right.
But it instantly,
Right.
instantly, I got a huge charge out of it because it's a huge promise of like everything. I was already into it. So, but it's funny that that terrible tattoo episode, it just gives you enough for him to like lose his shit like afterward, Jack's like character. So it's like, I guess this could be after that and before he turns his dad in, I guess. But yeah, it was and like you said, there's so much going on the island that it kind of enhances the bait and switch where you're just not
right, because you're
paying
not paying
attention
attention
enough.
to and also because you've been so desensitized because you just had so many bad flashback episodes this season. Because even though Stranger to Strangeland is the most egregious example, like the amount of flashbacks that we got throughout this whole season, it's like, did we really need this? Like you can count on, I feel like on one hand, the amount of flashback episodes across all the characters in season 3 that were actually important and actually added something new.
Yeah, but and like like Luke said, like there's something off too, and that kind of keeps you like, what is this like shit, and why is this the finale? Because we all expected that it was going to be a group finale like the first season, and then it being Jack for 2 hours. We were like, what are they going to do with this? And yeah, it's just also the funeral home is an anagram for flash forward, the name of the funeral home. It's like Hofstraller or something.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So it's an anagram for
that's right. Lost is
yeah,
for that too.
Yeah, they do a lot of that. And then it was just, and it promises, so much. It also promises another character death.
Yep.
Jack finds out someone's dead, and his instant reaction is to go jump off a bridge. So it promises another impact after just losing Charlie. And I thought it that lock Jack scene from season 1, the end of the finale. He says, "I don't believe in destiny." He goes, "Yes, you do. You don't know it yet." I always thought that was one of the biggest promises the show had. I think they're choosing this scene in this finale. It's a big scene. I kind of thought, is that an arc here? Like, what are we doing? And I thought this finale was the first time you really get a promise of that going forward, that he believes in something, or he believes that they did the wrong thing. Not necessarily that, there's all destiny stuff, but he believes they did the wrong thing at the very least. Yeah. So it was awesome. It was awesome. And then we had to wait 10 months.
Yeah, and then you had to wait 10 months.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like I said,
at least it wasn't 3 years.
At least it wasn't 3 years.
That's true. You know what? Yeah, 10 months felt bad.
That
I would sell for 10 months.
Is a blink of an eye in comparison to
it's one Christmas, just going through one holiday and then wrapping around. We'll see you, Yeah,
literally. Yeah. Exactly. Well, like I said, in order to answer Jack's questions, we have to go back. Don't worry, we will be back, because when we come back in the new year, we're going to be taking a little bit of a break, but we will be resuming with season 4 at the end of January. We will be wrapping our entire run of Talkin' Lost in the new year. Just to give you guys a little bit of housekeeping going forward, we're going to hit season 4 in the spring, season 5 in the summer, and season 6 in the fall next year. And then we will wrap Talkin' Lost, our next big, long full television series recap after the conclusion of Talkin' Thrones 3 years ago. Luke, this has been an absolute pleasure. You and I have literally spent every single weekend this year for 2025 talking about Lost. So this has truly been this really feels like the end of an era. Even though this is the end of our Lost journey, this feels like such the end of an era, especially because the transition from season 2 to season 3 is such like a specific iconic run throughout the run of the show, and I guess just that what you're going to see going forward for the next 3 seasons is a lot more of a, I guess you could say, consistent tone, if you will, because the show, like I said, The show
pace,
from here is
too.
forever changed.
Yeah.
It's a lot more heightened. It's a lot faster. The stakes feel a lot higher. The world building, the world just continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger as you get more and more mythology and inclusion and payoffs and wrap ups to arcs and everything. Like we truly are in for a wild ride, but we have so much more planned for the docket. All the movies that we're going to be covering, obviously, in the new year. January, we have our usual ones, our top 10 list, for which both of these guys will be on our top 10 movie episodes, our top 10 TV show episodes, our Oscar predictions episode. We're going to do another draft for the entirety of 2026. Our Super Bowl episode, we have so much to look forward to just in the first couple of months of 2026 going forward. But for now, and of course, Luke and I are not done. We will be covering the 2-hour-long Stranger Things finale when that drops in 4 days on New Year's Eve. Will it live up to the hype? We will see, especially after how these last 3 episodes. The answer to that question is most likely not, but we will wait until it actually drops.
Yeah, well, the hype's down a little bit. So,
yeah, it's very much down.
Yeah, so
we will see how that goes forward. So, Pat, real quick, thank you for joining us on this episode. You will definitely be back in the future. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs? If you have any social media places where you want to plug?
Nah, I'm just me. That's no worries. Yeah, appreciate it.
Of course. Luke, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
They can follow me at Luke Reviews on YouTube. Fortunately, no Marty Supreme yet. We have to wait a month for that here. So top 10 video delayed until I see Marty Supreme. That's the marker.
Don't worry. We'll make sure that you watch it before we get you on for our top 10 movies of the year. Ultimately, and you guys can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talkin TV Podcast across all platforms. Be sure to like and subscribe this video if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening to us on Spotify, make sure you give us a like. We'll be back one more time before the conclusion of 2025. But in the meantime, people, get lost. We'll see you guys next time.